Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. I just want to tell you how humbling it is that so many of you watch these videos and give me positive feedback. It's my prayer that I can be an encouragement to you and challenging and maybe give some clarity from God's Word as it has to do with our present time that we find ourselves in. You know, not just now, but especially now, it's easy to look around and to see where things are going wrong, or to see sin, to see where people are saying and doing things they shouldn't be saying. It's easy in difficult times to speak out against evil, against sin. Today, one of my brothers, Jacob Rutledge, he posted something about the millennial generation. And he said that studies have shown that millennials tend to think highly of self. The individual thinks highly of self, but has a very low view of their own generation, which means that they tend to have this perception that there's a lot of problems that are going on right now, but none of those problems are mine. And so when we find ourselves in a situation where there are a lot of problems that are around, what is the most appropriate way to approach that situation? You know, the situation that we kind of wake up to every day. Jesus gives us really a recipe or a process for approaching or grappling with perceptions of sin around us. In Matthew chapter 7, starting in verse 1, and you should know this, I've been revisiting a lot of the basics in Christianity. I think this is a time where we need to be especially centered and focused, and we need to go back to some basics. Jesus says in Matthew 7, starting in verse 1, "Judge not, that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when there is the log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye." This process, the order of things that Jesus says to do, this process is something that we all must do in this order. Self-focus first. When there are perceptions of sin, I must immediately focus self. Then he says, then you'll be able to help someone else. Self-focus helps me to be gentler and meeker and to show grace and mercy towards others. Without looking to self first, what happens is I tend to treat other people unfairly. I tend to have a higher expectation or set a higher standard for them than I would have for myself if I don't look inward first. And that's what Jesus says. He says, you be careful, because when you set a standard, that's the standard you're going to be judged by. So he says, so look within self, because what that does is that tempers the type of expectations that we set on others. One of the things that happens if we don't look to self first and then we point out sin in others and treating them unfairly and giving them expectations that are too high, what happens is that we begin to feel prideful that we have called out evil. But what that does is that causes us to be even more blind to our own imperfections, to our own blind spots. There's so much value in introspection, even when we feel like we're under attack, you might say. I'll never forget, it was a few years ago, Dan Winkler did a great lesson on how to process criticism, how to get through a process or criticism, how to address that in your own life when people criticize you. And one of the things that he said was, when someone comes out, especially preachers, they come up and maybe they accuse you of something after a lesson. He said, if someone gives you some sort of criticism, and even if you think that, especially it's not true or they don't really know your heart or whatever, he said, tell them, thank you for teaching me. Thank you for teaching me. And then he said, do your best to look for, even if it's small, look for any nugget of truth in the criticism that someone has when they criticize you about something. Look for the truth. Don't be defensive. Don't be out of the habit of looking inward first. He says, look inward first. Look for the truth in what they said, even if it's uncomfortable, even if you think it's a lie. It may not be a lie. Several weeks ago, I did a lesson from Psalm 139. The last couple of verses, David, he says, "Search me, O God, and to see if there's any evil ways in my heart." You know, when I do my lessons, one of the things I try to do in my lessons is to take people through my own process or my own personal struggle and grappling with particular issues and how to address particular sins. And to show people that it's not me against them, that it's us fighting together unto faithfulness. That it's a together fight. One of the things that I try to do in my lessons is to invite feedback and to invite correction and to invite guidance and to invite facts. Because I've got to admit that I don't know everything. That there especially are things that I don't know that I don't know. And I have blind spots. It's easy for us to see blind spots in other people. There are people that I really look up to that I see blind spots in. But that doesn't give me the license to go around calling out people's blind spots. Not if I'm following Jesus' process. In his process, he says that you first must look for your own blind spots. When I look for my own blind spots, what that will do is that will empower me to show grace and mercy and to think the best of others who I think have blind spots. And one of the reasons that's so important is because I need that from others. I know I have blind spots. I know there are things that I don't know that I don't know. I don't know everything. And so I need people to show me grace and mercy and to think the best of me. I need that. And when you think of the contrast in Matthew 7 between the speck in the eye and the plank in the eye, you know, the beam of wood in your own eye as opposed to the speck in your brother's eye. This doesn't necessarily mean that you have more sin and he has less sin. In the context, maybe it does. You know, the Pharisees, maybe they had more sin and they didn't realize it because they were blind to it. But when you think of the speck versus the plank, what's obvious is that I can always see more of my own perfections and more of my own heart and more of my own sin and more of my own intentions than I can of someone else. I will always be privy to more of my own sin and more of my own evil in my heart than the sin in someone else's heart and the evil in someone else's heart. You see, we really only get a glimpse into someone else's heart. We can only ever really see the speck in their eye, but we can always see the plank in our own. We can never know someone's heart like our own. But see, God is doing us a favor, though, when he says not to judge. Now, let's not take Matthew 7:1 out of its context, okay? What I mean by this is this. God does us a favor when he does not require us to judge someone's heart in the sense of knowing things about someone that we can't know. He doesn't require us to know what we can't know about someone else. That's God's job. It's his duty. It's his job because he's the only one that can. He's the only one that can know their heart fully. That's not my job. I can know my heart fully. And so when there's sin that needs to be addressed, the process must always begin with me looking to the place where I can see the most sin, where I can really know someone's heart because I can know my own heart. What God requires of us is to uphold the truth, to call out public sin or known sin, to see the fruit of someone and to address it with them. And he asks us, he expects us to fight or to strive or to struggle together with others unto faithfulness. It's never a us against them striving unto faithfulness. It's always a together striving unto faithfulness. The flesh pulls us in the direction of us versus them, or me versus them, or me and how good I am versus them and how bad they are. But this fighting or struggling unto faithfulness can never be together striving unto faithfulness without Jesus' process in Matthew 7. And so when we stay true to this process that Jesus sets forth for us of looking within first, that's when we will avoid hypocrisy. And that's when we will be in the right position to then help someone else strive with us unto faithfulness.